students have read it. What is the cringiest thing a teacher has ever done? Communications class. Students had to give short speeches about an unforgettable event in their life. A student with Down syndrome got up in front of the class and talked about getting his first job at the Vista School, a local academy for kids with autism and other mental disorders. When he's finished, the next speaker gets up and starts to prepare for her speech by writing her name on the board. She's writing sloppily, and from the back of the room my professor shouts, with handwriting like that you must have gone to the Vista School. Everyone in the class cringes. No one laughs. The Down syndrome kid has his jaw on the floor and tells my prof that his joke wasn't very funny. He dropped the class the next day. My high school swim coach. We had a swim meet against another school which got cancelled because a swimmer from the other team committed suicide. My coach then gave a speech telling us that they were too scared to compete against us and that's why our student killed themselves. Yeah, it was dead silent and not in a good way. My math teacher made our whole class to give a round of applause after someone answers a problem question correctly. Halfway through the year, instead of a round of applause, she said to give a dab instead of clapping. We dabbed each time someone answered correctly until the end of the school year. In middle school, I had a teacher that was always a jokester, wore wacky boaties, sang "We Didn't Start the Fire" when teaching history, etc. There was a student in our class who had a rough home life, and everyone knew it. His father died when he was 6, and his mother remarried a horrible person. One day, he shows up a bit late to class with a pretty bad shiner. Our poor, clueless teacher jokingly asks him what bully beat him up and made him late to class. Turns out, his stepdad beat him up. Cringe city. Miss Ed class was taught by our 60-year-old gym teacher. His version of Ed was to tell us about his first time on a mattress in a garage. The remainder of the hour-long class involved him telling us how important it is to take a shower afterwards. My high school freshman English teacher was a huge Shakespeare guy and was very openly a yogi spiritual gay man. After delving into A Midsummer Night's Dream, we began discussing the character Nick Bottom. With an awkward laugh he goes, "I don't know about him, but I'm more of a top." All 28 of us 14-year-olds sat in awkward, confused silence. In junior high, our English teacher was fresh out of college, early 20s, and single. Our 50-something gym teacher was obsessed with her. One day she walked past our gym class on the way to the office and he stopped the class and called her to get her attention. Once she looked, he decided to show off some muscles, not by flexing his arm, but by turning around and performing a squats in his gross old guy too short gym shorts. She was horrified and ran away. Our class felt awful for her. Our social studies department tried to put hashtag in everything. I had a history teacher who revealed in telling us that we would be talking about sectarianism in Europe during such and such a time period. Anyway, she didn't say it like that. What she said was, "Class, get ready, we'll be talking about sects tomorrow," but dropped the T so it sounded like sex. She said it about 5 times as we were all gathering our things to leave. And then there was another teacher who asked us if we wanted to know why he had sideburns. And everyone was like, why? To which he replied, "For tickling ladies' thighs." My year 7 English teacher asked us to state which animal we thought best represented ourselves and to tell everyone in the class as an icebreaker activity. She proceeded to tell us she thought she was a horse and galloped around the classroom, neighing. Okay, story time. My school used to imply this incentive for not fighting. Fight-free days was what they were called. Every so many days without a fight, we were awarded 30 days, ice cream, 60, dress out of uniform day, etc. We had managed to go a full school year without one incident. We were told we were getting a huge surprise. What could it be? Use up one of our snow days that we went without? This better be dope as duck. Because Zach totally deserved a jugular punch a few times. The day comes. Lo and behold, there is a ducking helicopter in our parking lot. That was intense. Every student got to come up and look at it while a pilot told us about it. Some got to sit inside. Then, the most cringe-worthy bullet move was rested upon our non-violent asses when our principal announced, "Hey, children, You've been so good at not wasting my time with your bullet Catholic school kid violence. You get to watch me fly around in this thing while you sit on a blacktop parking lot in the humid start of the summer heat. She truly thought we were going to flip it. So she goes up. We sit there in the heat that could start a riot as a year's worth of declining violence boiled in our skin. She comes down and has the audacity to brag about how amazing it was and that we deserve it. Started a fight the first week of school the next year. Lot of kids did. Cunt. 2 years ago, college lecture on the Galapagos Islands. The lecturer began with the Galapagos Islands are located off the coast of Africa. Everyone kinda heard that and didn't process it properly and let it slide. I mean, after all, it's a 9 AM lecture, so only one person corrected her. Later on she was explaining about Darwin and the animal species there, and went on to say something about the Galapagos turtle, and a lot of people started to speak up saying no, it's the Galapagos tortoise. The lecturer made the mistake of saying what's the difference, and the room almost exploded with all, close to 800, students trying to speak over each other about what the differences are. The lecturer has a doctorate in marine biology. This was a marine biology class. She should know the differences between turtles and tortoises. My orchestra teacher attempted to teach our whole hour how to whip nay. When our new math teacher cried in front of us because she had been confronted by the other math teachers that told her we were testing terribly and weren't learning anything and that she should be fired, turned out to be the best teacher ever. There was an art and design teacher at my high school who probably got her start showing cavemen how to make paint so they could doodle on caves. And though a girl was dressed too scantily, she would bring them to the front of the room, where there was a tall mirror, and would say, "Look at you. Is this how you want the world to see you?" I was 9 and I was in a 6th ed class with the other boys of my age. I don't know if this was an Australian thing for primary schools, but we were separated by age and gender for 6th ed for a while. Anyway, the teacher for this class also happened to be our principal. He was easily pushing 70 and had a voice that was a mixture of John Howard and Mayor Pelican from Blinky Bill. He went on to describe wet dreams for us. Sometimes, you might wake up in the middle of the night, and your underdacks will be wet. Why he thought underdacks was a good phrase for underwear is beyond me. Then came the clincher. So, when do boys stop having wet dreams? Asked my friend Sam. Well, never. Really. I mean, I still have wet dreams. Hands down. The most awkward, cringe-inducing incident in my schooling life. We had a teacher who had a nervous breakdown and quit mid-year, so we had all these long-term substitute teachers. We had this guy who went by Mr. Harvey. Harvey is his first name. Creepiest duck. Anyhow, one day he got mad at the class for being obnoxious, so he had us all stand up and asked each of us to start reciting books of the Bible. If you couldn't name the next one in order, you got to sit down. Yay. And a detention. No one served it though. The only kid who could recite all of them was told he could go with Mr. Harvey for a prize. He quickly disappeared from the class. It turns out something happened and he was quickly placed in homeschool and no more Mr. Harvey. Edit. He made him try on all sorts of clothes and filmed him doing it. So basically make cheese pizza. Passionately whistled the Titanic theme song through his hands during a mini test. He was so into it and no one really knew what to think. This guy also loved Mr. Bean and Bollywood. Great, but cringe sometimes. Female student. Can I use the restroom? Teacher, you asked to go last week. Is there a problem? Should I call your parents? Female student. I'm bleeding out of my V. Teacher made a joke about hump day, then proceeded to hump a desk. We had a teacher at my high school who got caught ducking an underage student. His wife started divorce proceedings and he was put on administrative leave pending an investigation. He went to a nice quiet park bench in front of a lake, pulled out a revolver and blew his ducking brains out. It happened right at the end of the school year, so the yearbook had already been printed. He was a history teacher in the International Baccalaureate program for the Wicked Smart Kids, or IB program as it was commonly known. So right there under his smiling picture in the faculty section of the yearbook was the caption IB History. Everyone made the morbid joke that those were his last words before putting the gun in his mouth. My biology professor lay down on the front table and tried to simulate clam movement using his arms and legs. Once my teacher told a talkative student to leave or get out. Freshman year of high school, my English literature teacher was trying to make learning cool, so he tried to act hip and cool in front of us. It was painful to watch because even though he's a nice guy, he is a nerdy old fat man trying to be cool. He will say things like yo, what up homies? What's the 411 with last night's homework? I had just turned 12 and started secondary. The first parent-teacher interview. She spent the entire time talking about how I seemed like one of the Sex and the City characters. Another time she spent the entire 55-minute period going on about getting the belt when she was younger. She never blinked either. In high school there was a teacher who gave a student a customized iPod with an inscription and everything. Needless to say, he wasn't back next year. A college math teacher wrote that 3x2 equals 4 on the board. Of course we all started saying that was incorrect. She then smiled and wrote 5. It was awkward. My history prof kept referring to it as the third reach. One time in Spanish class, a fellow student finished a test pretty fast. My teacher turned to him and she said, "I hope you're not that fast with the ladies." She sang a song in front of the class. We were supposed to participate, but no one did. It was like a 10-minute song, all by herself. It was her first year as a teacher and she left the room for a minute after. Student in high school hugged a teacher and she came back with "not until you're 18." I wrote down that one of the cultural downsides to the Holocaust was that Hitler burned works of art and defaced statues, and she called me out for it in front of the class and said I was wrong, and I fought back, but she still said I was wrong and that she went to college for teaching history for a reason. He didn't wear deodorant and he told us about he exorcised a house. Got busted for cooking bacon every morning in his classroom to cover up the fact that he was selling pot to students. Accidentally almost took us to YouPorn instead of YouTube to watch a video on sociology. In year 8, our maths teacher used to force naughty kids to sit at his desk, in a chair directly opposite. It was always up close and weird. A few years later, he was nailed for touching those kids under the desk and making them keep quiet. Ducking Catholic school : In the beginning of the school year, when I was in 8th grade, there was this new social studies teacher who bragged he could do the worm. We were all pretty interested, so we asked him to show us. He promised that if we reminded him at the end of the year, he would show us. Fast forward to the end of the year and a couple friends and I remembered at the end of the day and quickly went over to remind him. He happily got into position and then proceeded to do the worst worm I have ever seen. We just sat there awkwardly as a 30-year-old man pretty much humped the floor in front of us for a few minutes. We walked out of there in silence and never spoke about it again. My theater teacher in high school was in charge of the sound of music. My friend, an opera-trained soprano, tried out for the part of Maria von Trapp, a soprano. That role instead went to her favorite student instead, a ducking alto who was out of tune half the time. Oh, and she cast all the black kids as Nazis. Yup, I'm so glad she got fired a few years later. Duck you, Mrs. Doyle. Our theater department was a joke thanks to you. Late but oh well. HS. School funds were running low, so they made the coaches teach classes. The varsity football coach ended up having to teach the career choices economics class. He decided to make a game out of one of our tests. For the first time all year, the whole class was animated and really enjoying ourselves. It came down to 2 students who had to do a sort of fire round. The teacher was so pumped when one of the students won that he slapped her ass then yelled, "Good game." He immediately realized what he had done. Everyone silently stared at him and the student. He turned bright red, profusely apologized, while backing up with his hands up towards his desk. We never played any games again. Grammar. One day before freshman English class, me and a few friends were singing "Ring My Bell" by Anita Ward. Our English teacher walks in, hears us, and asks, "Do you know what that song is about?" And before either of us could answer, 6. It's a disco song. She says the clitoris. Remember that. It's about the clitoris. One of my English teachers told us how he was drunkenly hazed into joining the neo-Nazis or KKK as part of his college frat's hazing. Lol. He said he started freaking out when he kept receiving the newsletters and pro-white stuff they sent him all the time. God, I love that guy. I told this story a long time ago on a similar thread, but when I was in grade school we had a substitute teacher one day that was a bit on the heavy side. She was helping someone with something and when she took a seat, the chair broke. If that wasn't bad enough, when she fell she let out a fart. I felt so bad for her but couldn't help laughing along with everyone else at how ridiculous the situation was. My 7th grade home economics teacher told us she didn't wear underwear and to be respectful and not look when she sat on her desk in a skirt. First day of geometry class. Female teacher. Girls aren't as good at geometry. Our bio teacher wrote a rap called Cool Bio. Here's an example of a lyric. In bio we love to learn about calories. If you become a biologist you get a big salary. This is in a pretty rough neighborhood too. In 9th grade, a guy in my classroom was chewing gum. When the teacher told him to throw it away, the guy refused to do so. She then said, okay, then I'm going to put my finger in your mouth and get that piece of gum and throw it away for you. And you have no idea where my finger has been. From a high school teacher point of view, one of the first things we were advised to do in my teacher training 20 years ago was to not talk like a student. Anytime a teacher tries it, it's a disaster imho. Same with swearing. Talking about doing drugs or having sex. Just plain stupidity. You're not connecting. You're just creating more distance. Because now students think you're an unprofessional shat. You just have to be yourself. But at the same time be very professional and very careful about what you say. At the same time you have to acknowledge that you're old and not really care about what the students think. It's like juggling. And you just get used to it. This is my 2C. And 99% of my students like me. At least according to Rate My Teacher and tweets I've read about me. Yeah, we do search. My creepy old man science teacher in junior year was talking about how snakes have a bifurcated D. After explaining it, he looked around and said that ought to make you ladies happy. What followed was one of the loudest silences I've ever heard in my life. While complaining about people printing color pictures on the black and white school printers, pointed to a large poster of a black and white photo, and said, do you know how much ink it would take to make that? Then she realized that it was a picture of Martin Luther King Jr. This is kind of my fault. I was new to the school so I was standing at the front of the classroom waiting to talk to my teacher. When the bell rang I turned around and we bumped right into each other. I made her spill her coffee on herself and drop the donuts she'd brought. Then as she tried taking off her wet sweater her shirt came off with it. Aside from that though, she was told that she'd have a new student from Africa in her class. It was me. And she welcomed a black girl in front of everybody. Awkward. French teacher in high school during a lockdown drill. Lights are out. All the class is gathered in one corner. She tells a few to get in the front of the group for protection or some other ridiculous reason. Then tells one kid, just don't smile. Kid was black. Probably not cringeworthy, but it was definitely gross. In nursing school I had an instructor that was working with us during clinical rounds in the hospital. He wanted to show us how to properly transfer a weak patient from the chair to the bed, but he opted out of wearing gloves. As we were about to transfer the patient, he was helping to lift the rear end of the patient. The patient released the most foul bowel movement all over the instructor's bare hands. My friend and I just gently lowered the patient onto the chair. As the instructor just said, I guess that's why you should always wear gloves. Later that day, we saw him eating chili. Class was watching Romeo and Juliet. Teacher tried to fast forward past some minor nudity, accidentally paused on the image of Juliet's bare breasts, and the projector froze. It took the rest of the class period for the school's tech guy to get the image off the screen.